The artists who were in Soul of the Nation weren't showing their work in the UK and weren't collected by the Tate. So British curators didn't get to travel as much in those days, but more importantly, African American artists didn't have the opportunities to show their work in British galleries. There wasn't the internet, research was a lot harder and so on. So that's one of the reasons that things waited a long time. But over the 5 or 6 years prior to Soul of the Nation, Tate began to change that and change the texture of our collection of North American art from the 60s and 70s. And we brought into the permanent collection many of the artists who were included in Soul of the Nation.
You know, this is the kind of polite way of also saying something that we've tried to acknowledge as clearly and as honestly as possible in the exhibition, and that is the presence of systemic racism and of systemic exclusion. And that being really the kind of bedrock of why many of the artists that hadn't previously gotten their due didn't. And this is actually like a work of redress, and certainly not something that only we're doing, but that many, many scholars, both in the UK, often people who've had to do double duty as both artists and then as art historians. There were 12 rooms, and each room opened with an artist quote that was germane to the thematics or the exhibition time period in that given room. And really kind of gives you a kind of a condensed version of some of the feeling we were hoping to evoke. Or sometimes, from our privileged position, it would have been a quote that an artist had said directly to one or other or both of us. But for those people who are like paying attention, from one room to another, the artist quotes are completely contradicting one to another. So again, we wanted to physically bring into that space that sense of disagreement, of the debate and of the discourse and of the stakes of what artists were engaging with at this time. But one of the, just to let everybody in on some of the kind of internal discussions, we used to often start meetings, whether it was with front of house, volunteers, visitor services, our colleagues in learning, digital, across the museum, catering even, and we would say one thing. We would say, this exhibition is exactly like every show you've ever worked on at Tate before, and it's completely different.
Instagram and celebrities, and so we'll show some pictures of this. So that's a typical way in which Tate markets its exhibitions. It was great to see it, and we were very happy with the design.
But they were also around here. They were in Catford. They were in Lewisham. They were in postcodes that there aren't normally Tate posters of that size. So that was already a slight modification on what Mark will then discuss as this kind of wider sense. But it goes back to our question of who we wanted to speak to specifically with this exhibition. And we thought that, you know, actually a young Londoner's not going to care if we get a 5-star review in The Guardian. I mean, we're happy with that. Or if the art newspaper says this is a great exhibition and makes the best of end of year list. There are other ways that we have to try to engage people.
Yeah, there's two more there.
So we'll just say a bit more about this. Usually taking photographs inside exhibitions is banned at Tate. It's not allowed because we haven't got the permission. It's not worked in our collections, works with borrowing, so we have to get permission. We really sort of put the case to our seniors that we had to allow people to take photographs, and we had to allow people to spread the message about the exhibition. So Instagram was allowed after a while. It took like about 3 weeks to persuade everyone, but after that, that became our main way of marketing. So that was a big change, to allow people to take photos in the show. And then that connected to something else that we had the idea of, which was to think, well, actually, why don't we get people with a big following to come see the exhibition, and then they can put stuff on their Instagram. And so we reached out to people that we know in the States who are connected to Jay-Z and John Legend and others. And then
Neither of us were there when Jay-Z was there.
But we were there that night. So, what we did is we thought, okay, well, if John Legend puts this on his Instagram, then people might come, and this slide shows you like someone tweeting that she's standing there because he's stood there. So that was a big change, and it worked very well. Once Tate committed to do the exhibition, that meant that the budget was in place for us to do all the normal things that are involved with making an exhibition. So that meant the budget was there for us to bring work from America to Britain in special crates and to transport it back. It meant that it was the budget for us to do a normal-sized catalogue, not a massive one, not a tiny one, but a normal-sized one, and to have a normal marketing campaign. Where the Ford Foundation and the extra money we got, what that enabled to do, which we wouldn't normally be able to do, is a couple of things like the film programme and film commissions that Zoe mentioned, and Spike Lee bringing him over to give a talk at the beginning. But it was financed for the most part in the same way as every other Tate show.
Well, I mean, I feel you and I hear you, and I learned art history exactly the same way. And I first learned about many of the artists that were in the exhibition through a really inspiring studio art teacher when I was still in secondary school, who helped me do some independent study. And that's how I learned about Charles White. That's how I learned about, I will say, actually, I'm not sure there were any women that I was studying at the time, but Elzire Couture and a number of others, Archibald Motley, William H. Johnson, and a few others, Bearden definitely. And there have to be these other ways. And actually that was part of the pitch to the Ford Foundation, that as much as we wanted, the Young Londoners again, to come to the exhibition, that we didn't want to assume that everybody would even be able to set foot through the door. And I thought, what does it mean to just introduce people through the internet so that if you said, can you name a black artist, someone might be able to do it that couldn't do it before. The reason why I work in the public sector is because within the realms that I can, I'm committed to how do you make art as widely accessible as possible, not only for those people who buy it at auction or can collect it or store it in warehouses in Switzerland and other things. So I am worried about too facile a conflation between the two.